As I always do every 6 months or so, I opened up discussions to you all for a Q&A. So here are the answers to 20 of your questions. Can you be friends with a karmic or soulmate plus karmic? Can it truly be platonic? You can absolutely be friends with a karmic or soulmate plus karmic. As you know, not all karmics are those that you're attracted to, as your parents and immediate family has at least one karmic member in it. You've probably had many karmics and soulmate plus karmics already in your life as friends, and they have been purely platonic. But if you're asking if egos who are physically attracted to one another can be platonic friends, or where one ego is attracted to the other where it's not reciprocated, the answer is generally no, it cannot be platonic, because one is always wanting more. If you're in this situation where you're wanting a platonic relationship with a karmic or soulmate plus karmic and are aware that the other person wants more from you or vice versa, you're looking for me to validate that it's not selfish for you to stay in the relationship. And I have no judgment of the situation and cannot validate you. You're choosing to stay in the relationship because you yourself want something. And that is a symptom karmic lesson that you need to figure out. How do you definitely know someone is soul tribe? You cannot definitely know anything. Your ego does not know anything. It perceives it, it judges it, it creates expectations and fluctuates based off of brain chemicals and emotions. You can only follow the patterns of how other egos present themselves. And if the pattern fits for you, then your ego has its answer for today. In the end, this other physically manifested 3D person is you as the universe. So whatever label you give them is simply the ego labeling in order to feel more in control. Do monadic twins have the same path as split soul twins? I added this question simply because I've received it many times. We have to move away from these new age spiritual fad terms. I do not speak on soul, ever. There is no soul. There is one. I am. Oneness, singular, not split nor separate, except to the ego perceiving. There's no such thing as a monadic twin, nor a split soul twin, nor a starseed twin, or any of these concepts that began being spoken about within the last 6 years. It is the human ego that wants to feel like it has an understanding and validation of what it's going through. You are the universe manifested in physical form. You are the only thing. Nothing has split off from you. You are not a partial entity. Everything is connected. How do you let go and unattach from the twin? Firstly, the definition of unattached is to not be connected or associated with any particular body, group, organization, etc. To be independent. What you're searching for is non-attachment, not unattached nor detached. Non-attachment. And this is where the learning of lessons, submission to the higher self, and truly understanding that you are the universe comes into play. Without the understanding, and I mean true understanding deep within the self with a capital S, you cannot find non-attachment because your ego is still viewing everything as separate. There is no separation. Your twin does not exist except perceived by your ego. Until you understand that, your ego will be attached. What do you do when you don't feel happy anymore after an awakening? What is happiness? Happiness is a fleeting emotion, just like every other emotion. And what's happening is that your ego is currently holding on to the 3D verbal terms and societal value systems that it has been programmed with. Happiness is a fluctuation in the mind. Sadness is a fluctuation in the mind. Boredom, loneliness, anger, fear, desire, they're all fluctuations in the mind with some addition of brain chemicals. If you've had an ego degradation, you should be aware that there is nothing to be happy about, just like there's nothing to be sad about. Everything is the same. Let go of your attachment to the ideals that these words hold and the teachings of your community. Peace and equanimity are the states that you can find instead when you allow the ego to let go of its programming. What is the difference between learning a lesson from a karmic versus union from a twin? Learning a lesson from a karmic can feel like an epiphany. It can also feel like a I will never again allow, or I will never again put myself in this situation, or I will notice the red flags when type of thing. When you reach union, it is not a realization. It's full submission with no egoic thought put into it. It's pure peace and non-attachment. Is there a point that the chaser has to leave things to divine timing through a conscious decision? This is a great question, and I'm going to answer yes, even though it doesn't have to be the case. However, each person I've worked with on a twin flame journey, and even myself, have made a conscious decision to be done and leave things to divine timing. I just ask you to make sure you're not patiently waiting, but instead truly non-attaching from the outcome. If you're waiting, you're chasing. If you're submitting to the journey and the higher self and allowing divine timing to unfold how it will with no desire to change things, then it will definitely aid in finding that non-attachment and reaching union with the self. Does the twin trigger your deep-seated shame? I find this question to be so interesting because it was asked as if everyone experiences it, and this is just a common part of the twin flame journey. My answer is, it depends. It depends on what you have shame regarding. It depends on what your core karmic lesson is. It depends on how it's being triggered and why it's being triggered. It depends on what patterns it's following. Shame is anger pointed inwards when it hasn't been safe enough to express the anger outwardly. Any of us with a core karmic lesson of self-worth most likely know what shame feels like, because it's our propensity to swallow our anger in order to be what our egos think everyone else wants and needs. Shame is also a symptom karmic lesson. So regardless of whether a twin or a karmic or a soul tribe member or soulmate are triggering shame for you, the point is to learn to let it come up, sit with it, and work through it. Shame is a very hard symptom karmic lesson to learn because you hate yourself so much while working through it that there are times that you just want to cease existing. I encourage you to write a letter to those whose egos have caused the original anger in you, expressing your rage. Don't send the letter, but get the rage out so that the ego can begin to heal the shame. Why don't I feel my twin's energy during separation? For one of two reasons, if you are the chaser. One, because due to your own trauma responses, you detach, dissociate, and shut down your energy field, so nothing is penetrating past the ego's fear. Two, because it's not a twin flame. What do you do when everyone's energy is bombarding you and you can't stop the telepathy with members of your soul family? You practice self-care, reel back your energy, and ground yourself. This means digital detoxing for a while, activating the root chakra, doing a salt cleanse, wearing a hematite ring, walking in nature. You're too open in your upper chakras right now, and you're letting all the energy in with nothing to hold you down and ground you. Can the runner feel the twin flame connection and run before the chaser feels the connection? No. If the runner and chaser meet in person, they both feel the connection energy, and it generally takes a few weeks for the runner to run. I know the person who asked this states that they are the runner and this is what occurred, but chances are you are dealing with a symptom karmic lesson of fear of abandonment, fear of trust, fear of intimacy, or a core karmic lesson of self-worth or self-love. And you're interacting with a karmic who is meant to show you this. Why did the higher self create egos that are so resistant to change? Why did the higher self create egos that are malicious, that are psychotic, that are sociopathic, that are righteous? Remember that you are perceiving another ego to be resistant to change, expecting them to be more like you, and also believing that you know what lessons they're meant to be learning and believing that they're not learning them. You cannot force another ego to change. It is that ego's journey, and if they don't grow, learn, and expand, then they will at another point. That other ego is still you as the universe. So you are the one that manifested them that way. The question then becomes, why is your ego believing that it knows what is right for another ego? Why is your ego expecting, hoping, desiring, pushing, and attempting to control? I'm not asking this in an accusatory way. I'm asking because the human ego likes control and to always think that we know what's best for everyone and everything based on our own experiences. So change your ego's perspective and work on your own expectations where you do have control, as opposed to attempting to control another ego. They're not your concern. Why don't runners have romantic soulmate relationships? This is a really good question. And you're right, runners do not tend to have romantic relationships with soulmates. This is because runners have a propensity to be very closed off to the world, and only the severe energy felt with a karmic or karmic element, such as a soulmate plus karmic, is enough to break through that hard shell facade, or shake things up enough for them to actually learn a lesson. So in brief, it's because soulmates are too gentle, codependent, and giving for runners to learn from in a romantic relationship. The runner would steamroll the soulmate. Will having a karmic who you believe is a twin or a false flame make the twin flame relationship easier when you meet them? Well, my first question is why you think you will meet a twin flame in this incarnation. The answer to this question is no. Karmics and false flames do not prepare us for the twin flame journey except by teaching us lessons that the twin doesn't have to teach us. But chances are those same lessons will be triggered or brought up again or picked at so that the higher self can make sure you learned them. If you've been convinced that you've met a twin and then realized that it was a karmic, this means that you're looking for a twin, and I hope that you're careful about what you're believing. A twin will trigger your core karmic lesson, but they will not ingrain it deeper. If you feel worse and worse about yourself around this person, they're not a twin. Sure, the pain twins cause is the deepest, most heart-wrenching, gut-punching pain you'll experience, but you will not hate yourself. You'll instead feel like the universe has opened up and thrust you onto a treadmill of spirituality and healing work. How do you deal with hormones regarding a spiritual journey? This is such a big topic, and as I told the question asker, I actually want to write an entire book about the ego and the body. But I promised that I would address this just a little bit in this Q&A. My own body is currently going through perimenopause, so I have quite a lot to say on the matter. However, with regards to hormones affecting the spiritual journey, especially during perimenopause, which is how the question was posed, my two biggest suggestions are, one, to practice mindfulness like it's your full-time job, and two, practice self-care like it is your biggest hobby. The problem with fluctuating hormones, whether you're in puberty, have a hormonal imbalance, are pregnant, postpartum, on hormone replacement therapy, or are going through perimenopause, is that what your hormones tell your body is what your ego believes. So 1 minute, you could feel that you are on the greatest twin flame journey that's ever been witnessed by the universe, and 10 minutes later, you could be in the corner crying that you've been lying to yourself for years with your core karmic lesson triggered to the highest degree. You could be on a rampage tomorrow morning that your karmic ex is a piece of shit, and then feeling euphoric that everything is interconnected later in the afternoon. Practice meditation. This is what helps me the most. I mean, it helps so much. Practice yoga or go for walks and get the body moving. Go on TCM herbs to help balance your hormones. Dangui is a really big herb for hormonal imbalance in both traditional Chinese medicine and in Western herbalism, which is what I practice. Most importantly, do not ever let anyone gaslight you or tell you that you're being too much or overly sensitive because you're hormonal. In fact, don't let anyone ever tell you that you're being hormonal in general, unless they are asking with love and care if that's the case. They are not in your body, and they do not know what you are going through. And just because you have hormones that are fluctuating doesn't mean that your clairsenses are not working. It doesn't mean that whatever is affecting you mentally wouldn't be there if you didn't have hormonal fluctuations. It just means that the hormones are magnifying everything that you feel. And as my own twin likes to say all the time, this too shall pass. Can soul family members speak to us in dreams, or is it just fear? Absolutely, all soul family members can speak to us in dreams. I talk about this in my video, Why We Dream About Karmics, which I will link down below. They can present themselves via the clairsenses just like any premonitory dreams can. Now, we can also have our subconscious fears show up in our dreams as well. So it's not like every time you see a soul family member in your dream, it's because they're speaking to you. If you have very strong emotions in the dream with whatever they tell you, that's generally subconscious fears popping up. If you're instead mostly impartial or maybe just a bit annoyed that they showed up in your dream, then that is most likely connection energy and clairsenses. Does being around the twin require you to be 100% authentic, where your words and energies have to be aligned? What does it mean to be 100% authentic? What does it mean to be authentic in general? Authenticity is defined as real, genuine, and not copied. But to be authentic, in this sense, signifies that you follow your ego's emotions, and as we know, there is nothing authentic about the ego. Every 3D physical manifestation of yourself in human form has an ego. Each one of those egos has its own emotions, traumas, triggers, ways of learning, experiences, value systems, expectations, lessons, etc. Your ego will never know how another ego works. So if we're speaking of requirement, as in you have to be real or the twin flame journey won't continue, that's an egoic perception. Realness, authenticity, honesty, energies, words, all of these concepts are perceived and subjective based on who you're speaking to. Is it a beneficial practice as a human ego to be honest? Yes, but it's not a requirement. It's a choice, just like everything is a choice. Can you meet a soulmate after a false flame? Absolutely. You can meet any member of the soul family after a false flame. Will a false flame leave your consciousness eventually? Well, leaving consciousness signifies leaving the ego. So will you forget that they ever existed? Probably not. How many relationships have you had in your current life that you have completely forgotten about? If you're asking if they won't hold emotions for your ego anymore, then that depends on how attached your ego is. But yes, they act just like karmics. So once you learn the lesson or lessons, you won't be so attached. If you're exhausted after a false flame, does this mean they were a twin flame? Nope. It means that they exhausted your ego. You were triggered. You were traumatized. You were shown what is in store for you when you meet your twin. Here's the thing though. You will not know if someone was a false flame until you meet your twin flame. There is no way of knowing if someone is a false flame until you have the correlation with the twin. Otherwise, it's simply a karmic. So don't get stuck in the labels and titles. I understand the feeling of needing to validate how excruciating the emotions were when you got out of a relationship with someone, but you don't need anyone else's validation, nor do you need to give the ego a fancier sounding title to assuage your ego into believing there was a reason for it. The reason is because you were trauma triggered, and that's enough. So with that, thank you all for your questions. And until next time, all of my best and highest vibrations to you.